Good morning. Ooh, blessed morning to everyone who is in the vicinity of my voice. And if you can hear me, oh, what a blessing. Good morning. Transforming love community, family, and friends. Yes, as we are continuing our month of love and our month of raising the consciousness and decolonizing your mind. Oh my, I like to thank our speakers that have already graced us. Good morning, Kendra, that have graced us with their spirit and their consciousness with us this month. And baby, when I tell you the treat that we have for you this morning, oh, what an absolute blessing. First of all, I like to thank a spirit known as Shahir Stevens. And wherever she is and whatever she's doing, we know that the hand of God is upon her. Joanna, good morning. Franny, good morning. Sister Audra, good morning. Good morning to you. Bridget, good morning. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to see you all. Jazzy, good morning. Good morning. Blessed morning to you. Reverend Bonnie, Reverend Bonnie, good morning. Good morning. Send Kennedy my love, will you please? Listen, y'all send all the babies our loves. Hey, Tim, how you doing? You know, we haven't been in church, so let me tell you something. Our little babies are growing, and when we see them the next time, we won't even recognize them. Dr. Reverend Spencer Murray and the great, fabulous Fabu Jackson. Good morning. Good morning. Don Don, good morning. Send my love to Mama Bert, please. Oh, Nikki, so good to see you this morning. It is a beautiful morning. It's about 31 degrees and the sun is shining. If you can, go out and really, really enjoy this day. Ah, can you just take a breath with me right now? Because as I always say, it is the breath that keeps us connected to God. And this morning, I just want you to know that I am rolling with Sarah Young. Jesus listens, and it is a book of prayers. And I just want to share today's prayer with you if I can. Oh, regal Jesus. You are my best friend as well as our King. We want to walk hand in hand with you through this life. Please help us face whatever today brings pleasures, hardships, adventures, disappointments. We rely on you each step of the way. We know that nothing is wasted when it is shared with you. Can I say that again? Nothing is wasted when it is shared with you. You can bring a crown of beauty out of the ashes of lost dreams. You can glean joy out of sorrow, peace out of adversity. Only a friend who is also the King of Kings could accomplish the marvelous metamorphosis. There is no other like you, Lord. There is no other like you. The friendship you offer us is practical and down to earth, yet it is saturated with heavenly glory. Living in your presence involves living in two realms simultaneously, the visible world and the unseen, eternal reality. Thank you, Lord, for giving me the ability to stay conscious of you while walking along dusty earthbound paths. As your word declares, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. We are fearfully and wonderfully made in your awesome name and nature. Amen. Amen. Thank you, Sarah Young, for a book of blessings and prayers. We are saturated and we are going to get saturated again. I want to announce that Transform and Love Community has some wonderful things going on, and we are going to do our church announcements right now. all the dark side of the light chasers, all you light chasers that have been rolling with us for the last few weeks, and those who wish to join us, you still have time. Come to class Tuesday at 7 p.m. The Zoom ID number and the Zoom passcode are on our website. So I want you to go and to our website and get all the information that you need. Yes. Register now. Those of you who are, what do they say? Dragging your feet. We need you to register for re-register or register again. We want to have your latest information, name, address, birth date, all of that, so we can keep in contact with you. Go to the website homepage and scroll down until you get to registration. And it only takes a moment, not even a minute. It only takes a moment to go in and put in your information. So come on, TLC, register. All right. It is time for Sip and Study the Course of Miracles with Reverend Nicole Miller this Friday at 8 p.m. I will be sitting in for Nikki this Friday, and she will be on the call as well. But I will be sitting in for her. First Miracles Club, Sip and Study. Join us this Friday at 8. All the information is on the website. And the lineup for next month, I just want you to know it is amazing. We're going to take our lives back next month with Dr. Reverend Spencer Murray, Nicole Miller, our own Reverend Shahira Stevens, and Rev has pulled out of the magic bag Earl Purdy. Come on, y'all. Come on. 10 o'clock service next month, an awesome lineup. And coming up March 6th, Dying to Live with our own Reverend Dr. Spencer Murray. Yes, join us next Sunday. Woo! I tell you, Transform and Love Community, TLC, is the place to be. Now, getting to this wonderful soul that I'm about to introduce this morning, I am so honored to have the opportunity to even know this woman a little bit more as I was asked to introduce her. And Dr. Rose Moten is a psychologist, an author, a speaker, life transformation coach, and founder of Bloom Transformation Center, a Detroit based wellness center that blends traditional mental health services with the metaphysical and holistic approaches. Dr. Rose has been featured locally and nationally on television, radio, and in newsprint articles from the Oprah Winfrey Show on the OWN Network, TEDx, the Chicago Sun-Times, Detroit Free Press, WXYZ, WDIV, da 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 da, on and on. More importantly, and more recently, she's been recognized by media outlets as one of the top mental health experts, assisting others in navigating the many unforeseen mental health challenges that the COVID-19 pandemic has presented. We've never seen times like this before, ever. And so with her spirit and her knowledge, she has been navigating us through those things that come up that we never even could have imagined. Dr. Rose's highly acclaimed book, Bloom, 7 Steps to Personal Transformation. It is available on Amazon. I went and purchased mine. I suggest you go see it. It provides a practical and effective blueprint for self awareness, personal transformation, and mental emotional wellness. She works with organizations and individuals all over the world, guiding them through their own growth and transformation, utilizing the concepts in Bloom. In addition to outpatient mental health and counseling services, Dr. Rose is the only mental health professional in Detroit offering the revolutionary trauma release training known as TRE. sound healing, gong meditation classes, and neural optimal brain training. Did you hear me? Neural optimal brain training. Go on, Dr. Rose. Dr. Rose Moten is transforming lives and inspiring others to live their lives in full bloom by discovering and aligning with their most authentic, most purposeful, and most purpose filled selves. Ooh, transforming love, community, family, and friends. I present to some and introduce to all of you Dr. Rose Moten. Good morning.
Good morning. What an intro. Thank you so much.
Woo!
Thank you so
You
much.
are
I
so
appreciate that.
welcome.
I definitely appreciate it. I can't think of any place I'd rather be this morning.
Oh, bless your heart. And we are happy to have you. And we await this powerful message that you are about to drop on us this morning.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dr. Rose Moten here. And again, as I just stated, it's such a pleasure to be here with you all this morning. When Reverend Shahira came to me and asked me to be on this platform today, I graciously and humbly accepted for two key reasons. First of all, I love her. I absolutely love her. I can't even necessarily remember where our paths crossed. I'm just so grateful they did. But one of the things I do remember years ago is in my practice, I started to get a few new patients. Now, I've been in practice. This year marks my 23rd year. I'm a clinical psychologist by trade. And one of the things that was mentioned in the intro, it's so important for me, even though I went through the traditional educational course, learning all the theories and the treatment techniques to help individuals that I would treat eventually. I learned early on in my practice, especially working with my people in my community. I'm a native Detroiter, born, raised, and educated in Detroit. And when I was working with my individuals, patients, it became very obvious early on that the modalities and the theories that I was taught in traditional education, where they serve their purpose and they are beneficial in helping individuals to achieve optimal mental health, I soon learned it wasn't enough, especially for our culture. It wasn't enough because there were missing pieces there that was not truly allowing individuals to align with their optimal, just mental and physical selves. And so I started to train before I even finished my doctoral degree in a lot of just different holistic and metaphysical practice, anything from learning clinical hypnosis to, as it was mentioned, training on trauma techniques and things of that sort, because it was obvious that so much of what affected us, even though individuals would come in and discuss, I'm anxious or I'm depressed, it was rooted. I would say 95% of it was rooted in trauma. And I knew something more was needed to help individuals. So I started probably I'd say about 8 years ago, getting clients in, and I kind of gauged my patients to see how open and receptive they would be to these holistic and metaphysical practices. And I remember it just started to be an influx of a few patients that when I would kind of gauge them and say, hey, are you open to kind of exploring, for instance, numerology? Because I'm a firm believer in we have to know ourselves before we can even start a journey of self-discovery, of course. And I remember a patient of mine saying, oh, I know all about that. I know what my life path is. I know what numerological year I'm in. And I'm like, because that was unusual, trust me, being here located in the metropolitan Detroit area and seeing people of color, that wasn't something that even when I trained in these practices, I oftentimes was the only person of color in these training centers. And when I asked this patient, well, where'd you learn that from? Because I was just intrigued. She told me, well, my reverend taught us. And I was honed in. Your reverend who? Reverend Shahira. And that just, I don't know if that's when I reached out, or somehow our paths crossed after that. And Shahira, I'm sure, can fill me in. I'd like to know what her recollection of our first meeting. But I knew then that she had to be someone special, because when you have a spiritual leader that is truly, not only truly, but unapologetically committed to empowering her people with information that can empower them, teach them to empower themselves, you are truly, truly blessed. And so I thank her for that. So that was the first and foremost reason why I jumped at this opportunity. The second was when I heard the topic, the subject matter for this month's speaker series, Decolonizing the Mind. I knew this was something I had to be part of, because again, in these 23 years of practice, that has been obviously one of the most important feats that individuals must take to be able to really step into their true power. As I kind of just sat and reflected on what it is I wanted to share with you all today, I like two key events, or two key times in my life kind of presented themselves that I remembered. The first was years ago when I was finishing up my doctoral degree. I had gotten to the point where it was time for my practicum, time for me to do my internship and get those internship hours out of the way. And at that time, this was roughly about 2000, the year 2000. And at that time, I was a mother of two. I was a wife. I was working full time. I was in a doctoral program full time. And I neglected to get my application in on time for the internships. And so what was left were one place that I did not want to be, the one place that I was just committed, and the individuals I was committed that I did not want to work with. Now, keep in mind, at this time, I'm 28 years old, right? 28 years old, finishing up my PhD program, and I think I know everything. I have some 20-year-olds now, so that's just par for course for development, right? We get a certain age in our 20s, and we think we know it all. So at that point, I had such biases about certain segments of the population, certain clientele. I didn't want to work with people with addicts or people recovering from drug addiction because of my biases at that young age. And as fate would have it, as I'm a firm believer that, when we have a lot of judgment, God will put you in a position so that judgment is checked. So the only internship site that was available was a residential drug treatment recovery center for women. And I had to do it. There was nothing else available. I soon learned early on, needless to say, that bias immediately dissipated. But what became so apparent during that time is how drug addiction, any type of substance addiction, was just a symptom of a bigger problem. That was not the problem. What I would hear time and time again from these women just like myself, women, that just like my sisters, my good sister friends out there, is that the substances, what led them to even have this problematic relationship with these substances, was trauma. It was trauma. I heard horrendous stories from individuals of all types of trauma, every type of trauma you could imagine. And for these individuals, because we are, as human beings, we want to protect ourselves, we want to save ourselves. And for these individuals, and it's all about, that self-preservation, they saw the way that they could shut off the memories of these horrendous traumas. They saw the only way in their surroundings for them to be able to even cope and kind of shut off those loud traumas that continue to kind of just be in this repeated loop in their brains was that substance. And I soon developed such an interest in just understanding the impact that trauma has on so many of our life choices. And ultimately, because of that experience, I decided to do my dissertation on the effects of emergent spirituality in addiction recovery. And it's just a little keynote. One of my subjects at the time, before he even dropped an album, was the R&B, award-winning recording artist Kim. He volunteered to be part of my subject matter when I was studying that. And so you can understand, for someone who went into this setting with such biases, with such reluctance, with such just preconceived thoughts of what these people who, in my mind, just didn't have enough self-control to stop using these substances, it totally put me divinely on track to really make this whole ideal of helping individual transcend trauma as part of my life's work. Just a few years after that, after I received my PhD, I interviewed and received the position as a school psychologist. And this was for an alternative school. This was for a charter school. And I got the position and had no idea when I interviewed that one of their settings, one of their locations was actually located in a youth jail in the city of Detroit, an area I would pass at probably my whole life, right there at Mac and Woodward, over there, the Elliott and Jail Center. If some of you don't know, there's a couple of youth jails located right in like the heart of the city. And so my placement was actually in this jail with young boys. I say boys, I'm not even going to say men, because these young boys aged 12 to 17 were housed here in this jail. And I tell people that this was the most just heartbreaking yet rewarding experiences of my life. Just imagine that paradox there. Heartbreaking yet rewarding. At this time, I had two young boys of my own. And so to say countertransference, that's a term we use in psychology when you start to relate to your patient as someone you know and love. I couldn't help it. It was there because in these young men, I saw my sons. I could not imagine, every single day I would go home to my children knowing I'm leaving young boys who aren't able to go home to their family. And this was just, it was just systemic. It was watching these young, brilliant minds being caged in this jail with no parents around. And for some of them, it was actually a relief, because for some of them, for many of them, it was their just first taste of structure. It was their first taste of being able to, have regular meals to eat. It was their first time of having adults validate them and tell them that they're special and that they had talent. I can't help but to oftentimes recall a young man who was waiting for me to do some assessments on him. And he was actually drawing and doodling while I was working with some of the other young men. And when it came time for me to call him in so I could work with him, I looked at his artwork and it was phenomenal. This wasn't just some doodles. This was world class kind of artistic skills at this young age. And I looked surprised and I said to him, I said, "Did you draw that? Did you actually draw that in this short time that I've been working with the other individuals?" He says, "Yeah." He says it very nonchalantly. I said, "Oh my God, you are an amazing artist." And his eyes widened and he looked at me and he sat back. He said, "Am I? You think so?" No one had ever said that to him. No one had ever validated or commended that this natural gift that was showing from this young man and could have definitely taken him to all types of places around the world. I have a daughter who's in art school now, so I see how she's thriving. And this young man had just as much, if not more talent than my daughter did, but he's housed here and he had no one to ever tell him that. During that time at the jail, I, as I mentioned, it was so rewarding, but so heartbreaking also. And I was actually during that time pregnant with my fourth child. And I remember one evening I was asleep. I was dead asleep and I was awakened by this urge to just write. I was awakened. Something, divine energy just woke me up and told me to get up and just start writing. And I pulled out my notebook and I just started writing. wee hours in the night, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And it was said to me, told to me during this, I call it channeling, not to stop until I'm done. So, for a writer, I'm a writer also. It's very common for us to write, go back. We want to read what we wrote and go back, but it was clear, just write, just write. I was just being fed just these words that were overcoming me. And so when I finished, I had a piece that I entitled The Collective Unconscious. And I'm going to share that piece with you guys. And I'm going to share that, and then we'll talk about just some of the things that we can do individually and collectively to transcend the collective unconscious, to decolonize our mind. So here we go. And this was written again, this was written in 2002. A little revision just to bring some things up to time, but here we go. I got it. I finally figured it out. Can you believe it? I figured out the cause behind the plight of my Black people. I finally know why so many of our Black men sit caged in cinder block cells, why so many mothers have crack cocaine coursing through their veins, nourishing their unborn child. I figured out why so many kids have become simple afterthoughts of their parents, spending their days high off weed, beginning their days with a blunt and a 40 ounce. This has become their breakfast of champions. I now know why so many fathers choose to duck out of their responsibility, hiding behind telephone poles on street corners, hoping friends of the court won't find them. I finally figured all of this out. And it only took me 10 years of college, 4 babies, and 3 degrees to do it. Can you believe it? I figured it out. You see, this guy many years ago, he came up with this concept he called the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious. He believed that within all of us, we have a memory of things we aren't even aware of, a memory of things that didn't even happen to us, a memory of things that happened to our ancestors. Now, if this theory holds true and I apply it to me and you, it would mean that just like we inherited our wide noses, our thick lips, and for some of us, our so called good hair, we inherited something more, some things unseen. So if we have in our genetic makeup, in our DNA, a collective unconscious, I found the answer to the dilemma that has so many sociologists, psychologists, and anthropologists up in arms, and so many Klansmen and drug dealers cheering in delight. The collective unconscious. Could it be the inbred memory of our great 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 grandmother Ola being shackled and forced to endure 3 naked months on a cold ship, laying in her own waste in 1622, that has so many of us sitting idle in 2022? Could it be the stripping and banning of all of our purpose filled names and the whitewashing of our identity and religion that has so many of us still asking the question, who am I? Who am I? Could the imprinted memory that great great granddad Olu had of his children being pried from his hands and sold on an auction block, could that be the motivating force behind so many of our fathers' absenteeism? Could it be the backwood lynching of our great great auntie Sadie that turned so many of us off against camping? Black people don't camp, y'all know that. Or could it be the assimilation great Uncle Tom resigned himself to that continues to have so many of us proclaiming, I'm not selling out to the white man? Well, guess what? You already did. Could it be our great grandfather's memory of being hosed down with water hoses by men in blue and burned at crosses by men in pointy white hats that has so many of us saying, F the police and the white man too? Could it be the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of ideals, inventions, traditions that were stolen from us that we can never take credit for? Could that be why too many of us today refuse to become enlightened and educated, choosing instead to rob others? Could the effects of being told that we were three-fifths a person, could that have so many of us generations later feeling less than whole? Could it be the burning down of post slavery thriving communities that has so many of us reluctant and unable to build generational wealth today? Could it be that I figured it out? Did I find the answer? I don't think you realize the implications of my discovery. You see, way back in BC times, the great philosopher Cicero said, in the cause lies the cure. In the cause lies the cure. Again, if this is true, and I apply it to me and you, then I find the cause of all that plagues our mentality, and we can stop all this madness. Perhaps with all the technology we have today, we can pinpoint the collective unconscious gene through some genetic mapping, possibly isolate or deactivate it so that my children's children will have no memory of the pain, the horror, the inhumaneness that is our history. And without any memory, there's no way our present behaviors will continue to demonstrate this collective pain. I mean, can you imagine it? Think about it. Our streets cleared of crackheads because there'll be no more crack dealers. After all, our DNA will no longer carry the deafening memory of unimaginable trauma that has allowed so many to participate in systemic genocide by filling our streets with the little white rock. And of course, if there's no crackheads, there can't be any more crack houses. So my grandchildren will no longer have to step around the discarded dreams and low self-esteem that fills our streets. Biscuits and salmon croquettes will become the new breakfast of champions. Because without the collective unconscious knowing at our spirit, we will be appalled at the ideal of killing our brain cells and clouding our ability to come up with a cure for cancer. My beautiful daughters will no longer have to look for love and security outside of their race because our Black men will have a newfound self-worth that breaks down 8x8 cinder block cells. Self-destructive behaviors will be a thing of the past because we will all regard our body as a temple, a storehouse of possibility. Our memory of having our bodies mutilated, raped, and ravaged would not be part of our consciousness. Can you imagine a world like this? Could you imagine a world where every Black man and woman assume their rightful place and glorify God by becoming a reflection of the Creator as it was intended to be? But hold up, wait a minute. What if I'm looking at this collective unconscious thing all wrong? Maybe, just maybe, the collective unconscious that maintains this present day madness is the same collective unconscious that has allowed us to overcome, to persevere, to survive. Could it be the collective memory of horrendous nightmares that gave King his dream? Or the memories of being silenced that inspired Mahalia to sing? Perhaps the collective memory of being bound inspired Jordan to fly, and the memory of despair is what kept hope alive. It may very well be the memory of illiteracy that gave Langston his words, and that very same memory that spirited this poem. Could it be the memory of being refused basics like ABCs and 1, 2, 3s that have motivated the BAs, MAs, and PhDs? Oh, no, 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 no. This presents a dilemma, you see. Like sweet and sour, like the yin to the yang, like the first peak of sun after a late summer rain, the collective unconscious embodies both triumph and pain. So, a delicate task it will require, you see, to separate our collective rage from our collective integrity. This is a procedure of great complexity that will require a commitment from both you and me to create a collective unconscious based on purpose and possibility. So, my challenge for you right here today is to ask yourself what may change your present state? Gain understanding from your past as opposed to excuses. Our past is just that, our past, you see, and we must understand the part of our history that has divided us, that has broken us, that has led us astray, leaving far too many of us nothing more than a modern day slave. So I implore you, I beg of you, right here today, to stand up and assume your rightful place. Let's rediscover and reclaim the omnipotence of our collective unconscious before it's too late. The collective unconscious. Let that digest just for a moment. The collective unconscious. As I mentioned, it was 2002. Gosh, 20 years ago. 20 years ago that I wrote this poem. Well, 20 years ago, I wrote this poem. 2002. Again, it poured through me. I can't take credit for it. Yeah, my hands wrote it out, but I can't take credit for it at all because it was something that experience in that drug rehabilitation center, that experience in that youth jail, I knew it had to be more. This was not merely, we can't just put this on poor parenting. We can't just put this on children who's gone astray and they're oppositional and they just, just bad kids or what have you. We can't put this on people who just can't control their urges to indulge in drugs. It's much deeper than that. And I knew that intuitively. I knew that intuitively. Now, fast forward again, 2002. 13 years later, first study came out. They did a study on the effects of the Holocaust, not on people who were victimized or with the Holocaust, but on their descendants. They did a study on the children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. And you know what they found? They found that there were actual epigenetic changes. There were genetic changes to these individuals as a result of the trauma that happened to their grandparents and great grandparents. These kids never saw the Holocaust. They weren't even born or thought of, their parents weren't even born when it was occurring. But this study showed that there were epigenetic, actual genetic changes to individuals who were offsprings of those traumatized by the Holocaust. Now, I'm not trying to negate at all, I would never negate the horrendous nature of what occurred in those 4 years of the Holocaust. But if studies found that 4 years of trauma impacted the genetic expression of offsprings, children and grandchildren and great grandchildren of those who experienced that trauma, what do you think 400 years of slavery, 400 years of slavery, and the subsequent discrimination and Jim Crow laws and the things we even see today, what do you think that impact has had on us, on every Black person in this country right now? Think about that. Think about it. That study in 2015, it sparked a lot more studies also. But of course, very few, if any of the studies really focus on the effect that it had on us. But there was another study shortly after that that looked at the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of POW survivors. And some of the things they found in this study will amaze you. The grandchildren and great-grandchildren of individuals who survived prisoner of war camps during the Civil War, what they found is that these individuals had much higher levels of cortisol just at their baseline. Now, if you don't know about cortisol, cortisol is a hormone that's definitely, we use it, helps us kind of just, burn energy when we're working out, it's that stress hormone. But any hormone that's flooded in us, like a stress hormone, needs to be discharged. But when it's elevated, what effect does that have on us? So in this study, they found that these grandchildren, children and grandchildren of POW survivors, they had a 11% higher mortality rate than those who parents were actually in the Civil War but were not POW. A higher 11%, that's huge, higher mortality rate. What cortisol does, just to give you some background, it prolonged or excessive or cortisol that is not discharged, it weakens the immune system. It lowers our serotonin levels. Depression, anxiety goes up for those individuals. It creates nerve problems. It creates digestive issues, irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's, all of those things. It creates a higher level of blood sugar, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease. When we look at the pandemic and why it hit people of color just disproportionately more, it's not because we were necessarily doing anything any different than anyone else. But the genetic changes that all this trauma for so many years have inflicted upon us makes us more susceptible to disease, to a life of just being unwell. So what can we do about that? So the good news is, let me share this with you guys. The good news is that anything learned can be unlearned. And any exposure we've had that has altered or changed our genetic makeup, we can start the process of healing now. Again, shortly after it was, I'm trying to think of a year, there was a Dr. Joy DeGruy, actually about the same time, think about it, this was 2001, this Dr. Joy DeGruy, she wrote a thesis, a doctoral thesis on post-traumatic slave syndrome. So that's about the same time that I wrote this poem. And I'm a believer. I remember in college, a professor sharing a term called the zeitgeist of the time. And basically it means when there's some new information that needs to get out in the world to make a difference in the world, they'll start planting just sparks of insight in so many different people's minds to try to get it out. So I have to believe that for myself and for Dr. Joy DeGruy, we were both just really impaled because it's time for us to start making this shift. So yes, anything learned can be unlearned. And how do we go about unlearning? And how do we go about transcending the effects that this prolonged exposure to trauma that our ancestors experienced, that our parents and grandparents, that we've experienced? How do we transcend it? How do we transcend it? So I wrote a book 10 years ago. It'll be 10 years last month. It was 10 years of it commended my 40th birthday. And it was called Bloom, 7 Steps to Personal Transformation. And so what I discovered and what I developed many years ago is a 7-step system to help people just transform their lives, transform relationships, transform whatever it is that they know they need to kind of just evolve from. And I want to apply those 7 steps to what we can do practically, individually and collectively, to, again, decolonize the mind, to transcend this collective unconscious. So the first step is rediscovering you. Rediscover you. One of the hardest questions, and this is what my TEDx talk was actually on, the road to authenticity, but one of the hardest questions that people, you wouldn't think it's hard, but when I have new clients come in and I ask them the question, I say, who are you? Those 3 words can stump a person. They don't believe it stumps it because they'll answer. If someone asks who you were, you answer right away with your name, probably what you did for a living, probably your status if you are a mother or wife, or, people say, I'm a child of God, or I am blessed. And none of that is wrong, but that doesn't tell me the true essence of who you are. And you think about all the years the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, where families were divided, where people were separated, where the names that even you had your whole life when you were enslaved here, you were even robbed of that. So that question, who am I, is so important for us to really give much more consideration than we've ever given before. When you ask people, like I said, usually it's some label or some title that they relate to. But the first step in us transcending this colonized mind and transcending this collective unconscious is to really get to the truth of who we are. First and foremost, individually. And then it will have that effect, out in the world where collectively we can start doing it. So one of the things I give patients of mine and coaching clients of mine, they get a personality inventory. We start looking at just different ways to give them the information, even the numerology, as I shared the story earlier with, having patients who were members of this wonderful church you guys are a part of coming to me and sharing with me that they've already gone through that with their reverend. Again, to have a spiritual leader who is committed toward really empowering you guys with the knowledge of understanding self. I hope you don't take that for granted. And you understand how unique and special and fearless that is. So really explore whatever, not just, you think about even the religion. I don't want to negate anyone's religion, but when we were enslaved over here, our religious practices, the things that we made us feel close to our creator, were stripped, and we were imposed with a whole new set of understanding and that we had to digest and swallow whole. So it's even important for us to even challenge, what things hold true for us, what things have empowered us. Because if you're practicing some type of just following that has not empowered you, maybe it's time to rethink that. Maybe it's time to think and explore some other modes and modalities that will provide you with the information that you seek in truly understanding self. So research, one of the things I'm a big fan of when I talk about rediscovering you, is also understanding where you came from, understanding where we came from. My children, my children, because of the situation of just wanting them to just have a better educational system, they went to school and they were typically the minority, unfortunately, right? And they would come home, each and every one of them, at some point in the school year with a project where the teacher required them to do a family tree. And my kids would come and they'd be frustrated because their counterparts, their peers, would have a family tree with their great, 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 great grandparents on here, and they'd have the family tree of where they immigrated from, and they can go all the way back. And my children will come and say, but the teacher said I have to go back 4 or 5 generations. And I will say, this was a learning opportunity for the teachers, because I'll let them know that's not possible. That's not possible for little Black boys and girls to be able to do that. And it was almost like they didn't even realize it. And so I want to share with you guys. So I'm a big fan of even the doing the ancestry, the 23s and me's, the African ancestry. I'm a big fan of that because it validates the fact that our history did not start here in this country. When you do that, I was able to do it, and I actually shared with my son. I had my oldest son do it as well, and he was able to go in, and oftentimes he goes in and just research, and he sees that he has fourth and fifth cousins, just Western Africa, just all over the world, and it just opens up this new world view. Like, oh my gosh, this is bigger than me, and we have folks. I have a cousin. I want to share this, and Melvin Collier. I have to give him a shout out. He created this book for us about 6 years ago. And this 500, over 530-page book. He did the work for years in just chronologically going through. This is, you can see slave records. He actually has listings of the slave records. So he was able to trace our family back to the 1700s. 1700s. Do you know how amazing? You know how amazing that is? And you know how validating it was for my children to actually see this and see their history? And I'm so grateful for my cousin for doing that, because this gave them a roadmap. This gave them understanding. This empowered them to know that they have greatness implanted within their DNA. So I do encourage individuals to, that's a great way of rediscovering you, to just actually sit down and take these tests. I know there's a lot of concern about, what the government may be doing with the results or what have you, but it's time for us to just again transcend this implanted notion that our history started here. Our history started here. My cousin actually, after he wrote this book, and he was able to connect with some distant cousins in Africa, and a few years back, he actually went to a family reunion for one of these distant cousins in Africa, and it was just amazing to see the pictures of that. So the second step is is unlearning and challenging what you know. And I kind of alluded to that a little bit. It's really doing an inventory of, again, all of our belief systems, everything we've kind of been told that is our truth or our family truth. Or I remember years ago having a patient come to me and she told me her mother told her, don't expect to have a happy life. That's not in store for people like us. And she believed that, because, of course, your mother told you that, you're going to believe that. And for years, that's how she kind of navigated her life, not to expect anything good, but to just kind of survive, just kind of survive and make the most of it, take it day by day. And that was until she challenged that. That was until she saw individuals who were truly plugging in and living a great life and said, why can't I have that? I deserve that. And she took the first step, and coming to therapy and really learning to do an inventory of all those belief systems that don't really hold true for her. And as a result, she was able to transcend her life. She was able to transform her life and create an existence for her and her children that was told was not in the cards for her. So part of decolonizing our mind is challenging all of those things you think you know, challenging the concepts of such things that was part of our culture, things such as corporal punishment, you know. Again, this expectation that, don't expect to have a good life. Challenge those things. And also ask yourself, and this is very important, are you being a traumatizer in your own home? Oftentimes, we've heard the saying, hurt people hurt people. And when individuals don't recognize the impact that even generational trauma has had on each and every one of us, they will express the latent depression and anxiety and that stuff that resides in them by lashing out at those around them, by being tormentors in their own household. Very good friend of mine just finished her dissertation a few years ago on domestic abuse in the Christian home, which is very prevalent. And again, you have to, as part of this method of transcending ourselves, really question and ask what parts of your existence in your family, in your community, that you may be inflicting and reinforcing the trauma that already exists. The third is making sense of your senses. So our emotions are nothing more than energy in motion. Think about it, emotion, energy in motion, energy in motion. We have to make it a deliberate, intentional practice to recognize what emotions we plug most often into. There's oftentimes like this sense of just acceptance with having this demeanor of despair. and acceptance in, having just not being happy and being hard, being strong, being, that this resilient person that is not going to let their exterior surface crack under pressure. But emotions, knowing and understanding the benefit of our emotions is one true way to even transcend this and transform the energetic effect that emotions have on us. These higher level emotions of love, happiness, bliss, of connectedness, they actually feed our bodies with chemicals, just like we talked about the serotonin chemicals that actually helps to reverse the effect that trauma, ancestral trauma may have on us. Really learning to expose yourself to things that feel good and to disconnect yourself and put boundaries around things that flood you with these lower level emotions. My son actually, my second son actually started a program, and it's called Amplify Outside. And what he does is that he actually will take groups of individuals, mostly Black urban individuals, and he takes them on tours like through nature. Up north, they'll be in the UP and they'll be going from waterfall to waterfall and they'll pitch tents and they'll stay outside. And he believes, and in his words, he says he believes that recreation, like outdoor recreation, is which we in our DNA, being on in the outdoors is healing, being with land, being in nature is part of us being one and being healing. He actually says recreation is part of our liberation. Recreation is part of our liberation. Think about how good you feel when you're on vacation. Like people give themselves permission when they go to the islands. I see all the Facebook posts and they say, "Oh, I am I'm they'll say they're plugged in, they're present. They're mindful." Because for too many of us, when I talk about emotions and I talk about unlearning and challenging what we know, for far too many of us, that ability to be present and to just be mindful has been lost because we are so stuck in the past focused thinking. If only this had not happened. Why did that happen? Or if only we can go to better times back when this was in play or that was not happening. Past focused thinking creates depression, or we're so focused in the future. This mentality. I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when the bills are paid off. Or I'll be happy when I find that perfect person. This mentality of mentality creates anxiety. So part of unlearning and challenging and connecting to self involves us just being learning to be more present in the here and now. And a traumatized mind has difficulty doing that because trauma changes the mind. Trauma triggers the mind. And trauma keeps you from being present. So part of learning to be present, and nature is amazing with that, is part of our liberation. It's part of our transformation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I don't have too much longer to go. Live in the now. Live in the now. And the fourth is all about envisioning. It's okay to envision the life we want for ourselves. I'm a big person. I do vision board workshops because there's such power. There's such power to actually creating a tangible visual representation of what it is that you want to manifest in your life because that's energy. And when you create this visual, tangible representation of what you want in your life, this area of our brain called the reticular activating system, now it's alerted and it's going to alert you. It's working 24/7, even when you're asleep, even if you're having a conversation with someone else. That reticular activating system, once you've created this visual representation, it is working behind the scenes 24/7, 365 days a year to recognize and put these magnetic just filters out. So if something comes into your vicinity that matches what's on that board, it's going to alert you to it and it's going to guide you on how to manifest that. Isn't that amazing? Like vision boards, there's a science behind it. There's a science behind us being able to manifest the life that we want for ourselves. The fifth step is to affirm, to affirm. You have permission to state what it is that you desire. Don't be afraid. It's not about you trying to figure out how it's going to be done. Just affirm. Say, put the order out there. Say what it is that you want. I am, the I am. Those two words are the two most powerful words in the human language because whatever you put after that, the I am, you put an order out there. It's like you place the order with the universe. So when you say, I am broke, I am tired, I am sick and tired of being broke, when you, the I am, when you put that out there, you just calling back more brokenness. We've got to be very deliberate in the language that we use, the language we use, not just ourselves, but even for our children. So transcend that I am and start placing after those two words what it is you truly want. I am healthy. I am loved. I am adored. I am protected. I am purposeful. I encourage each and every one of you, just three. Come up with three affirmations. Do more if you please, but three that you're going to commit to each and every day to speak proudly and speak out loud. And when you speak it, you have to speak it with emotion. Because, like I said, emotion's nothing more than energy and motion. So when you speak those I ams and you got that emotion, oh my God, the electromagnetic field that you put out around you is a magnet pulling all of those things that you're affirming. So if you're affirming I am broke, that's that electromagnetic field and it's bringing you more brokenness. You affirm I am loved, I am safe, I am healthy. That electromagnetic field is going to bring more of that. The sixth is just becoming, learning to be still and meditating. So it was mentioned in my intro. I do sound healing gong meditation here. We actually had pre-pandemic crowd yesterday. It was over 20 some individuals that came in for class yesterday. Because people are recognizing the importance of learning, again, to be still, to be present. As I mentioned, it was when I was still in this sleep state that even those words for that poem I shared with you guys flooded through. We are oftentimes in perpetual movement, perpetual movement. That's a trauma response, first of all. Always having to do something, always got something going on. You know, the inability to sit still and be one with yourself is a trauma response. We can transcend that by relearning how to be still and understanding the beauty that comes from that. I tell people meditating, when they come for the sound healing, I see it as like I'm able to step outside of myself and go plug into the creator, to go plug into source energy. When I meditate, I'm able to go plug into source energy, to refuel, to refocus, to reaffirm myself, and now I'm ready to take on the world and do what needs to be done for my well-being as well as my people's well-being. And lastly, connectedness. Connectedness. This is all about the collective unconscious. These studies prove the connected. We're all connected. We're all connected, and we can all play a role in the healing of not just ourselves and our families and our communities, but the world at large. We are all so very connected. The fact that we can experience the not just the traumas, but even the gifts of our ancestors tell us that they live within us. Oftentimes, when I'm on the sound healing instruments and I'm doing a class with the customers that come in here, I oftentimes say silent prayers to myself. But a couple of months ago, this prayer came to me, or this statement came to me, and I said, as I heal, my children heal. As I heal, my grandchildren heal. As I heal, my parents, dearly departed parents heal. As I heal, my grandparents heal. As I heal, my ancestors heal. Decolonizing the mind, transcending the collective unconscious is not just for us. It's for all those souls, the past souls and the future souls that we influence, that we impact, that we validate when we make the deliberate, conscious attention to transcend. I want to thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you all today. I pray, I hope that you receive something that has planted a seed within you to make a difference in the quality of your life. It is truly my commitment, my life's work, and my passion to encourage individuals to tap in to the truth of who they are and the power that resides within them to not just transcend their world, but the world around them. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Well, now, Dr. Rose, I thank you.
Thank
I thank you
you.
on so many levels. I thank you for being obedient to spirit and your purpose. I thank you for having the willingness to share what you know to be true with us. I thank you. I
Thank you.
thank you for these 7 steps that are going to lead us into decolonizing our consciousness and our minds. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you. Thank you. You closed out this month
you.
so wonderfully, so graciously, and so willingly. I told her before you all came on, I said that we know we were going to get something good because Reverend Shahira just don't turn her pulpit over to anybody. And you brought it to light. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. My pleasure.
I, oh, it was our pleasure. And I look forward to sound therapy. I do. Oh my God. All right, family. If this church, if this community, if this ministry has done anything to feed your spirit, uplift your mind and your consciousness, please give. Go to Givelify, download the app on the transforminglovecommunity.com and give, share, and just give. I tell you, it will not come back void. It will not come back void. And so, as we go our way rejoicing, as our lovely Horace would say, I want you to be blessed, but more importantly, be a blessing to someone else. And may the light of God surround you. May the love of God enfold you. May the presence of God watch over you. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Thank you. Thank you for spending your Sunday, part of your Sunday morning with us. And as I look through the consciousness of all that we're watching, I mean, Dr. Rose brought the message, and I think you got it. And I believe that you have. So be blessed. J Love, I just want to thank you. Thank you for all that you are and for all that you do. This would not be possible if it were not for you. And once again, I praise the spirit known as Shahira Stevens for wherever she is and whatever she is doing. May the hand of God be upon it. Be blessed, everyone.